Childhood is meant to be a time of innocence, laughter, and exploration. But what happens when that childhood is taken away too soon? Imagine being 7 years old, staring into the eyes of a parent who is falling apart. Maybe it's addiction, anger, or simply the absence of love. And without realizing it, something shifts inside you. You sense that if you don't hold everything together, no one else will. The world doesn't see you as a child anymore. You learn to hide your emotions and take on responsibilities too heavy for your age. But at what cost? This is the quiet tragedy of those who grow up too fast. It's not just about losing childhood moments, it's about losing yourself along the way. Today, we dive deep into the psychological cost of maturing too quickly and the long-lasting effects it has on our mental and emotional well-being. At a young age, the world begins to change, and so do you. It happens without warning. Suddenly, you are thrust into an emotional role that should have been reserved for adults. You might not even recognize it at first. It's subtle. One day, you notice that you're holding your breath, waiting for your parent to fall apart, while you pretend everything is fine. That moment, when you realize that your emotional stability is the one thing keeping the house together, marks a shift. Your childhood innocence begins to slip away, replaced by the heavy burden of responsibility. Your role as the caretaker, the peacemaker, the protector, begins. You start to notice that you're expected to manage emotions, yours and others. You become the emotional anchor in a sea of chaos, even if you don't know how to keep yourself afloat. What seemed like a survival instinct at the time becomes a lifelong pattern. This emotional shift shapes your reality and becomes the foundation for your future self. But in the process, you lose parts of yourself, parts that should have been nurtured and protected. This phenomenon is known as parentification, a term used by psychologists to describe the process when a child is forced into the role of a caregiver or emotional supporter for their parents or family members. This often occurs in households where one or more parents are emotionally unavailable or dysfunctional. Parentification rewires the child's brain, setting up a pattern of hypervigilance where they're constantly scanning for signs of emotional danger. This can lead to a deep-seated anxiety, where the child feels responsible for managing the emotional well-being of those around them. As they grow, this role extends beyond the family dynamic and into their adult relationships. These children learn that love is a transaction. If they give peace and manage others' emotions, maybe they'll receive safety in return. However, they also learn that their needs are not as urgent as others, and the idea of needing care, love, or attention becomes uncomfortable and even shameful. The emotional toll of parentification doesn't just fade with time. In fact, it becomes deeply embedded in the individual's psyche, leaving scars that affect their ability to form healthy relationships and manage their emotions as adults. The psychological impact of being forced to grow up too soon is profound. At first, it might seem like you're doing what you need to survive, keeping your family together, managing the emotional temperature of the household. But over time, this role becomes your identity. You smile more, cry less, and learn to navigate the world through the lens of emotional regulation, even when it's at the expense of your own well-being. You become hyper-aware of others' feelings, anticipating their needs, but pushing your own to the side. There's a silent agreement within you. You're strong, you're mature, and you're responsible. But no one asks, at what cost? As you grow, you internalize the idea that your own emotions are secondary. Your needs are brushed aside because the needs of others feel urgent. You carry a burden that no child should ever bear. But because of this, you start to disconnect from your emotions, from the very essence of who you are. This self-sacrifice becomes your coping mechanism, and before long, it becomes the only way you know how to survive. The impact of this early emotional burden is not just about feeling lost, it's about losing the ability to express your true self. As adults, the effects of growing up too fast are often invisible but deeply ingrained. You may become hyper-independent, believing that you can handle everything on your own. The idea of asking for help might feel foreign or even shameful, as if you're burdening others. In relationships, you might find it hard to trust vulnerability or intimacy. Love feels like a transaction. If you give too much, you might eventually get something in return, But the idea of someone loving you unconditionally may seem like an impossible dream. You might constantly overachieve, trying to prove that you're worthy of love, while secretly fearing abandonment. The lack of emotional security in childhood teaches you that you must constantly be doing, constantly be productive to feel valued. The need for achievement may overpower the need for rest. At the same time, you could struggle with feelings of numbness, especially during moments of happiness. Joy might seem unfamiliar, unearned, or even dangerous because it's so far removed from the survival mode you've been in for so long. The legacy of a childhood lost too soon is the ongoing struggle to feel safe, seen, and worthy of love. The revelation that comes with healing is a hard truth. The child you once were never had the chance to feel safe, to feel loved, or to simply be. Instead, they were forced to become someone they weren't ready to be, taking on the burdens of others. This deep emotional wound often stays hidden beneath layers of adulthood. You might not even realize it, but you carry that abandoned child with you. They are the silent voice inside that says, "Why didn't anyone protect me? Why was I left to handle this alone?" Healing begins when you finally face this truth. It's about allowing yourself to acknowledge the depth of that pain and the fact that you were never given the childhood you deserved. This process isn't about blaming the people who failed you, but about understanding how deeply that neglect has affected you. True healing doesn't come from simply pushing those feelings aside or pretending that you're fine. It comes from allowing yourself to feel the grief, the anger, and the sadness you never got to express as a child. Only then can you start the journey toward self-acceptance and emotional restoration. The journey to healing from the wounds of growing up too fast is neither quick nor easy. It requires self-awareness, emotional acceptance, and the willingness to reconnect with the parts of yourself that were buried. One of the first steps is to stop seeing your strength as a virtue that defines you. True strength lies in vulnerability, in allowing yourself to feel the things you've ignored for years. Start by acknowledging your inner child. Let them speak, let them be heard, and give them the love and attention they were denied. Healing is not about fixing the past, but understanding it and offering yourself compassion for the struggles you went through. Reconnect with the innocent parts of yourself, the parts that still crave rest, play, and joy without the pressure of responsibility. Understand that self-care is not selfish, it's a necessary part of rebuilding the self that you lost. Healing involves sitting with your grief, allowing it to flow, and forgiving yourself for the parts of you that had to disappear to survive. Start giving yourself what you needed back then, not to change the past, but to stop living it over and over again. In closing, the healing journey from growing up too fast is ongoing, and it is yours to walk. You may feel broken, but in truth, you are becoming whole again. It's not about erasing your past, but about giving yourself permission to finally rest, to feel safe, and to honor your own emotional needs. If you've spent your life trying to manage everyone else's emotions, it's time to focus on your own. Healing starts with a commitment to yourself, to your inner child who never got the love they needed. The first step is simply to acknowledge that this journey is long, but it's worth taking. Start by asking yourself, what did I need back then that I never got? And start giving that to yourself today. You're not too late. It's never too late to begin healing, to reclaim what was lost, and to build a life that honors who you truly are. Let this be your moment to embrace the journey, not as a child who was forced to grow up too fast, but as an adult who can now choose softness, rest, and emotional authenticity.